I'm Andrew D. Greenwell, born in Leonardtown, St. Mary's County, Maryland. That's in the southern part of the state. I graduated from the University of Maryland. I was born October the 29th, 1929.
October?
The 29th, 1929. I'm 83 years old.
And what school did you go?
I graduated from the University of Maryland. I went to a Catholic high school called St. Mary's Academy in Leonardtown, Maryland.
What year did you graduate?
From high school?
Yeah.
1948. There were 48 states. There were 48 of us in the class. And so...
Yeah. And then you directly went to the University of Maryland?
No, I did not. I went to the United States Maritime Service Training School in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I graduated after 6 months in engineering, and I then went deep sea on ships around the world.
Where did you go around?
Well, one trip I made, I went all the way around the world. I left New York and went through the Panama Canal. I went over to Marseille and then down to the Suez Canal. I went in 1951. I was on the LST 287. We had almost 60 ships, and we went in a very secret convoy up to northwestern Greenland, 900 miles from the North Pole, in Operation Blue Jay to build a Thule Air Force Base there. And I did a lot of trips over to Europe and all over, yes.
Did you enjoy that?
It was good. It was a good experience, and I used my money to go to college.
How much were you paid monthly?
Oh, gosh, we're going back to 1951, 49, 51. I don't have no idea. It's been.
Was it $100?
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, it wasn't anything like salaries today. No, it was very. I'd say we were probably making, I don't know, $2,500 a year or whatever, but room and board and all that.
What was your job in?
I was in the engine room, fireman, oiler, water tender. I took readings on the engines and the after steering and electrical system, and that's what I did. And
so you were an engineer?
No, I was what we call QMED, qualified member of the engine department, but I was not a licensed engineer. No.
So when did you finish your merchant marine?
Well, I used it in summer months when I was in college too. After I didn't, my last time I went was 1957. That was the last time I took a cruise.
But you knew that Korean War broke up, right?
But I went in. I volunteered for the draft during the Korean War, but it was winding down. But I was in the 51 and 52, I was in the Merchant Marine. In 53, I went in the Army. 1951, I was in the Merchant Marine.
Yeah.
And 1952, I was also on another ship.
Yeah.
And then in 1953, I volunteered for the Army draft.
So you enlisted or drafted?
I gave up my student deferment and went to the draft board and asked to be drafted. Instead of enlisting for 3 years, the draft board would take you for 2 years. So I went in the Army for 2 years and served 1 year in Korea of the two.
All right. How did you know about the breakup of the Korean War?
I was in the 29th Infantry Division, Maryland, Virginia National Guard from 1947 to 1950. And I was at Camp Pickett, Virginia.
What was that? You said that you never joined the military until 1953.
That's the Army. You're talking about the Army active duty. I'm talking about I was in the National Guard.
Okay.
Not did go on active duty.
So tell me about the National Guard. When did you join the National Guard?
I joined the National Guard in 1947. My father asked me to join because they could get a armory for our rural county if we got a chapter of the National Guard. So he asked me, and a lot of World War II veterans were joining, and I enlisted with them for 3 years in the National Guard, so from 1947 to 1950. And in June of 1950, I was at Camp Pickett, Virginia on maneuvers with the 29th Infantry Division when the June the 25th when the war started. I was in the National Guard, but they didn't call us up like they did a couple other National Guard divisions. They didn't call it 40, 45th divisions. They called up. They didn't call us up. So then I got out, and then I volunteered later for the draft.
And you didn't know where Korea was at the time, right?
Oh yeah, because I had my cousin and friends had served over there right after World War II and before the Korean War. So yeah, I had a first cousin that was over there and some close friends. So I was very familiar with Korea.
Oh, what did they tell you? What did they tell you about Korea?
I don't think we really talked too much about our military service. I just knew they were over there, and they didn't really elate on what they did.
So tell me about you volunteered to be drafted in 1953.
Well, what I did, yes. What I did was...
What month was that?
No, what happened is that I went in to the draft board in the spring of 53, and they took me. They took me. Oh yeah, I gotta look down. They took me in June of 53.
June of 53.
Yeah, I went on active duty. The war was still on until the 27th of July.
Yeah, right. So when did you leave for Korea?
I left for the Korea probably about October, November of 1953, and I was over there for Christmas of 53. I remember that.
And when did you leave from Korea?
About 11 months later, and it was about October of 54.
So did you receive extra military training to be dispatched to Korea?
Well, I was in Korea, I was in what they call SCAWAF, Special Category Army with Air Force. That's CARWAF, Special Category Army with Air Force. And what we were Army engineers attached. Special Category Army with Air Force. WAF, Army with Air Force. And we were called SCAWAF, Special Category Army with Air Force, and we were Army engineers attached to the Air Force because the Air Force had become, in 47, a separate service, but they didn't have all the capabilities to function. So they still relied on the Army engineers. And since I had been in the combat engineers of the 29th Infantry Division, Maryland National Guard, I think the Army saw that I had 3 years of National Guard engineering experience. They put me in the Army engineers in Korea, and that was SCAWAF. And we had a threefold mission there. We had a battalion of Army engineers on each of the air bases or K sites in Korea. K2, K16, K55, K13, Suwon, you know, and I know them too. And so what happened was that we had a threefold mission: to build, maintain, and defend. And we had a battalion of Army engineers on all of the air bases in Korea and Japan.
So could you tell me about your specific job assignment?
Yeah, my specific job assignment is that I started out as a mail clerk, the mail person in my company. It's the Merchant Marine's not like a 4-year enlistment in the service. You can sail on a cruise and then get off. And I saved my money, and then I'd go back to college. So I was sailing and saving my money, and between the Merchant Marine and the University of Maryland is where I was until I went on active duty in the Army. Journalism. I got a degree in journalism.
Journalism.
Hmm
Wow.
I became a reporter for the daily newspaper down here. When I got married, I married a girl down here.
Oh.
So that's what I did. It started.
Newspaper name. What is the name of newspaper?
It's called the Daily Press right here now. Newport News, Hampton Daily Press.
Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting career. You've been all over.
Well, we haven't stopped there yet. I mean, what I ended up doing, I did the city government here. City of Hampton hired me. And that's when I was telling you about the two city managers that went to
Right.
Syracuse.
But let's go back to your service there.
Which thing, the ships or the
No,
National Guard or the Army?
No, in Korea.
Okay, I was in Korea.
In the beginning, you did you deal with the mail, but later, what did you do?
Well, they took me because I was handling the mail for my company, and then they turned around and they needed somebody to take classified mail and documents to these air bases around Korea and Japan, and I was tapped to fly top priority on these. So that's what I did. I flew messages all over Korea and Japan to the air bases.
Oh, so you personally delivers those
For the
classified...
for the battalion, right?
Tell
I
me
mean
about
for the brigade.
Tell me about the detail. What is the process? Let's say that somebody gave you the classified materials. How do you pack? Where do you go? How do you deliver? Tell me about those. The whole process, detail.
Well, basically, it wasn't like I handled any of it as such. I had a pack, and I took it to the headquarters that I was authorized to fly. I had top priority to fly on any aircraft, bump anybody, even though I was just an enlisted man.
What was your rank at the time?
I PFC and then a corporal.
So where did you go? That's why you've been all around the K.
No, just in Japan and Korea.
No, I'm saying within Korea.
Oh yeah.
Because you were delivering
Oh yeah.
materials.
I went to Seoul, K-16, I guess, and K-55 Osan, K-13 Suwon, K-47. I've forgotten all these K sites now, but that's where I went to those. And then I went over to Itazuki. You know where Itazuki is in Japan?
Yeah.
Ashia. I went over to those bases too.
It was already, the armistice was signed, right?
Yeah, but it was still, if I could tell you, I went back to Korea in 1988, to set up a Sister City program. And I never will forget flying into Seoul, and I looked out the window of the airplane when we were coming into Seoul, and I saw this 16-story office building. And absolutely, I left there in 54, and this was 88, and I could not believe what I saw, and particularly when I landed, and I was absolutely amazed what the Korean people had done for their country from what I saw it in late 53 and through 54. And it was just a very antiquated environment that I remembered, and honey carts and putting the stuff on the rice paddies and washing down in the river with the things beaten. And I just couldn't believe the soul that I saw. And they treated us, when I went back for the Sister City program, the top people in the government and in the industry, and they took care of us. Samsung, I was with the CEO of them, and they were just so great to us. There were 4 of us from the city who went over as a team, and I was asked to go by the city manager, who was a Syracuse graduate. And we went over, and our Sister City program is very intact and viable today. So anyhow, what it was is that they took us to the Olympics, and we went up to the DMZ and they let me walk around the table, and I got a certificate that I crossed into North Korea.
So you must be proud of what you did for
You better
Korean
darn
nation.
believe I am. You better believe I'm proud. Every time I see Koreans, I'm very proud of them. And we have I just put about a year of my life into an environment that was just enriching. And that's what it was with me. And I'm very proud. And from my Korean service, I belong to the Korean War Veterans Association. I belong to the Veteran of Foreign Wars and the American Legion. And I've been the commander of 2 of them. So, yeah, I'm very proud of my military service, and particularly my year of service in the land of the morning calm.
Were there any dangerous moments in your service?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Well, one time we had a flight. There were only a couple of Air Force pilots on the C-47. We were going over to Japan, and they were going to ferry 2 planes back to Korea, and I was the other passenger on there, and like I said, I had top priority to fly. And we left about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It was nice and sunshiny, and we got over the Sea of Japan, and the weather just all hell broke loose. Pardon my Latin, but there's what do you call them? A typhoon? Is that what you had? We hit one of those, and the pilot, he just had the crew chief kept looking out the window with his flashlight on the wings to see how the plane was doing, and it just started shaking and bumping and everything really bad. And so then one of the pilots that were sitting down as passengers, the 2 jet pilots, one of them struggled to get up to the cockpit, and the pilot had the door open, and you could see he was pushing instruments here and there. And finally, the jet pilot came back to his buddy that they had been reading pocketbooks and just relaxed, and they started strapping on their own parachutes. Passengers were required to wear parachutes, so I had a parachute on, but not strapped up. I just got in the harness. And the crew chief came back and told me the soldiers strapped on and said, "We're going over the side." So here we were in a typhoon over the Sea of Japan, and we talked about parachuting out of the airplane. And I said my last prayers because I knew I was going to reach the Maker up there. And it turned around. God, how he did it, but he got us out of that. And we went over, instead of going to Itazuki, we went over to Ashia. And then I took a train and came back across. And I was on one of my missions to carry classified material.
You mentioned Sea of Japan. We call it East Sea. So
Is that right?
yeah. It's been East Sea, and even in the old map of Japan,
Yeah.
they call it East Sea.
Yeah.
But during their colonial control of Korea from 1910 to 45, they changed it to Sea of Japan.
That's what I remembered it by.
Yeah, we don't agree to that. So
No,
East Sea
East.
will be appreciated.
All right. East, what is it now?
East Sea.
East Sea, okay.
Yeah.
East Sea, okay.
Yeah. So tell me about the life in the air base. You've been all around, but your base was in Suwon, or where was you?
I was at K2 Air Force Base in Daegu.
Daegu, and from there you delivered.
From there, that was part of my job. I still had my job with Daegu also, but whenever they needed a courier or messenger, they tapped me, and that's what I did. It wasn't like that was all I did. I wasn't like full time doing that, but they used me. Mm-hmm.
Were you by yourself delivering those classified materials?
Yeah.
By yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to hand carry those.
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What else did you do in the Daegu Air Base K2 while you're not delivering those classified?
Well, basically, I was in the orderly room doing various kinds of company chores, duties. Wasn't anything special. I was just an enlisted man.
Mm-hmm.
I made corporal, and then I came home.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't an officer or any of that.
But you had a skill dealing with the engines.
Oh, that was in the Merchant Marine. I graduated from the United States Maritime Service Training Station in St. Petersburg, Florida.
That's why I figured that you might end up working in the engine room or anything in
No,
the base.
not. This was administrative type of work.
Okay.
But one of the things that I started to tell you earlier was in February of 1954,
Mm-hmm.
59 years ago, Marilyn Monroe married Joe DiMaggio.
That's right. You talked to me over the breakfast.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. She married this Hall of Famer, Joe DiMaggio, and he had a commitment in Japan with baseball,
Mm-hmm.
and the USO asked her to come over and do some shows, and she did 3 performances in Korea.
Uh-huh.
And the last performance was at K2 Air Force Base in Korea,
Mm-hmm.
at Daegu. And I asked a buddy of mine that was in the Army with me, let's go down and see the USO show with Marilyn Monroe. He said, there'll be so many troops there, you won't get within a mile of her. And I said, for $10, I'll bring her autograph back. So I had a couple of years of journalism at University of Maryland, so
Right.
I knew how to handle myself. So I walked in front of the stage, and I had a book and a pen, and the generals and colonels were sitting in 3 rows of chairs. And I went over to the side of the stage and sat down. And I think the security people must have thought I was with Stars and Stripes. So I just sat there, and she performed, and I was right up on the side of the stage. And she finished her piece, and she started down, and there were 5 and 6, at least, military people back to back, reaching out to try to touch her hands. Some of them had cameras, and they were taking video shots and pop. It was a night performance. So she came down and got down. I had a little address book from the University of Maryland, and I turned it to a vacant page and gave her a fountain pen with brown ink. And I stood on my toes and reached over the other GIs that were in front of me. And I never will forget Marilyn Monroe. It really impressed me. She took that book and looked at it, and she looked right at me, and she says, they told me not to sign any autographs. And I said, Miss Monroe, I said, if you turn around and go back 1 page, you'll see where this other actress was here last month, and she signed. Oh, did she sign? I told her who it was. I can't recall now. And so she turned around and she signed my autograph, and I was the first one because she said this was her last tour. 3 shows, and she had finished it up, and she hadn't signed any autographs in. So she gave it back to me, and when I got it, my thumb here smeared the ink. She went all the way down the end. I waited. She came all the way back. And this is how sharp that lady was. I turned around and went to a new little telephone directory, and I got with all those hands, and I got and put it up to her again. And she got it. She looked at me, and she says, I've already signed this. I said, I know, Miss Monroe. I said, but I've smeared the ink. I said, would you sign it again? And she signed it again, and I have it back home. 3 homes I've lived in these years, and somewhere, one of the dresser drawers somewhere, I've got that autograph from Marilyn Monroe, and she didn't sign that many of them, I can assure you, because she hadn't signed any up until that point, and that was her last performance out of 3 shows.
You're a lucky man.
Yeah, well, I got to see the Marilyn Monroe, and I was watching something about 10 days ago on TV, and they had the most famous sexually beautiful, popular Hollywood actresses, and they had 30, and they started 39, 29, 20, and it went all the way up. It was on television, and Marilyn Monroe won all as the most famous of the sexiest Hollywood actresses of all times. Now, that's it.
Comments to young generation about your service in the Korean War.
I'm just proud of the young people who are serving today because I've experienced it. And my grandson is a Marine rifleman and scout, and he was in Afghanistan as a Marine rifleman for 8 months. And to see him back and healthy, I'm very proud of these people that serve in these Iraqs and Afghanistans and Vietnam. I was not in combat, but I served in a country that needed our services.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Any other comments that you want to leave to this interview?
No, I don't think so. I appreciate you seeing me.
Absolutely. I want to present you a certificate of Ambassador for Peace. This is made by the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs of the Republic of Korea, and also Korean Veterans Association.
Okay, good.
And I wrote your name in Korean, Andrew Greenwell.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Yeah.
Oh boy, what a something
Here.
this is.
That's English.
And that is, you put it over here, yeah.
Great. And this is the medal made by the same department.
Oh boy. Oh gracious. Oh boy.